Hey everybody, welcome to the DBS Films Podcast. My name is Kevin. With me as always is my brother Brendan, and together we make movies with DBS Films. And as you are listening to this podcast right now, we are in the process of making our 12th horror movie, which is a remake of Into the Forest, and we're very excited for it. So working title Into the Forest 2.0, you'll hear us refer to it as that. And really this episode, we just kind of want to highlight, what we're looking for going into this production process. We did it before for the shapeshifter. There's going to be a lot of, fingers crossed and knock on wood, because it always is a little bit of an intimidating factor in the sense of, things go wrong. Production's tough. There's a lot of things that you need to execute on. So hopefully we're not jinxing ourselves as always, as we mentioned, but I'm utmost confident for this one. So before we start, be sure to take a look at us online. Our Discord channel is the place to be. We make movies for our fans with our fans. You can see our newest feature, The Haunting of the Murder House, on Tubi. And really the place I wanted to start off is the question I asked you last time. I feel like I have well, I don't know, you seem a little bit different because the shapeshifter was a little bit more aggressive, but how are you feeling right now?
I feel good. I think this is by far our best pre-production that we've had with all the actors. I really like this casting crew for this one. They were very insightful. We worked on the script a lot. We had a lot of touches, a lot of Zoom meetings. I think they understood their character a lot more than other movies, and they were really working on getting the best dialogue out there. So I don't know if that's just you know they're taking the next step and following my advice to really do pre-production, or the script is just in a place where it's easier for them to identify their character, and maybe that just comes from writing 12 of these things. But for whatever the case it is, I just feel more comfortable with this process. Doing a 2.0 version of this movie is much easier than doing something like the shapeshifter, where that was the first time we're doing this movie. We're kind of going in the dark. We don't really know what's going to work, what's not going to work. We try to lean on a lot of stuff that we did before that we know works, that people like. But once again, like the whole story, the pacing of the story is just a little bit more difficult to tell, especially if you don't have that feedback. With this one, Into the Forest one, the first one that we did, a lot of people liked it, but it was a very polarizing movie. You either liked it or you hated it. And I really think the people who hated it just didn't understand what was going on, because we never did a very good job of clarifying the story aspect of it. So they got confused. And the minute that people get confused, they either turn it off or they get really pissed. So with this one, we cleaned it up. We did what we did with the Murder House. We have a very straightforward, linear story, and I try to really focus in on the characters that are really, really cool, which is the Nelson character, and he has a lead in this movie, and I think he understands his character, he understands what we're trying to do, and I think this is just going to be a much cleaner movie. So I'm really excited for it. I'm happy with the pre-production that we did. A lot of this stuff we've done before, and like always, we're trying new stuff. We're going to try and just step out of our comfort zone a little bit more. So am I anxiety? Do I have anxiety? Yes, I'm nervous. But I think there's a very fine line between being excited and being nervous, and we're going to try and walk that line as tight as we can. But I think that this one has the potential to be our best movie. It just comes down to whether or not we're going to execute on it.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, because for those who haven't heard the shapeshifter one when we did it, you were basically like, I'm completely nervous. But I think it goes back to the point that we've done this before. And it's one of those things, with the Murder House, I think we were much more confident going into that. We didn't have the podcast or anything going into it. But Shapeshifter definitely was a risk. It was a big movie. It was a lot of stuff to film. It was a hard set in the sense of like you had to get so much done. We were able to get it done, and there's a lot that could go wrong, but we nailed it. Whereas for this one, again, we're a lot more confident. The script is very tight. We have a great crew. A lot of the crew is coming from our Discord, which we know are, all about DBS. So they're very, very passionate about this project. And all these factors are adding up to have this level of confidence. I mean, I know I'm excited for this one. I think it's going to be a very smooth shoot. I'll knock on my wood real quick again, just to make sure we don't do any bad juju with it before we go ahead and start the production. But I really, really am confident in the sense that I think we're going to execute. I think we're going to really create a very good picture in the sense of, quality wise. I think this is going to be a clean movie. I think one of the things that I'm looking forward to is it's going to be a quick movie in the sense of getting it edited, getting it up, because it is found footage. So that leads me to the next question. Why are we doing found footage again?
Yeah, I think one issue that we're running into is, this is not our either of our full-time jobs. I have the OG DBS company that I have to run, in addition to the films at branch of the company, and it's just editing is very tedious and very long. With Shapeshifter, there's just a lot of stuff in that movie. There's a lot of stuff to just edit and correct and get to where it needs to go. And it's just, we're running into the timelines of, I don't know if it's very sustainable to be in pre-production on one movie, editing another movie, and then working with distribution and quality control on another movie. Most people make one movie every 4 or 5 years. We're trying to make 4 movies in 1 year. And I think in order to get to that, we have to kind of switch up the editing process a little bit. I think we can write a movie very quickly. We wrote this one in 4 to 6 weeks. I think we could shoot a movie very, very quickly. We're shooting in 8 days. It just seems to be the part where we haven't quite figured out yet is the editing process. And we don't really have the funds to bring on somebody else to really kind of get this to where it needs to go. And I still have PTSD from other people that I worked with in the past. I don't think they're as good editing at editing as I am. And so it's just, how do I spend more time, working on this project? And I just don't have a solution. I think that you just have to get through, these 160, 200 hours of editing to get these things done and uploaded to where they need to go. And that's fine. The problem is that I'm being, pulled in a pre-production direction, a production direction, and then a post-production direction on multiple different movies. And it's slowing down the process. So my solution now is to shoot found footage movies, so that I think the editing is going to be really quick, because you really isn't a lot of editing. You kind of drag and drop and try and get the pacing correct. And I think that my hope, and I remember our other found footage movies took a little bit longer, but my hope is that we can get this, uploaded much faster, which allows us to work on the next project. And I never really wanted to go with found footage because I was always like, oh, cinematic, that's where, people really like it. But I think found footage is fine. There's a huge community of found footage. Some of our best movies that perform well are found footage. So I think hopefully being able to do these found footage allows us to make more movies, make them quicker, get that feedback faster, and allows us to really focus on story, which is really where I want to be. I want to really be learning how to tell a good story, as opposed to, sitting down and spending all this 3 months in editing when we could be making another movie. So my goal hopefully is to edit this one together, have the Shapeshifter done, and then we're going to try and do one small little project at the end of December. I'm hoping by New Year's to have 3 movies ready to go, or at least in the process of being uploaded through quality control.
So this is a good point to bring up. If you listen to our past podcast episodes on found footage, we always say the pros is that it edits really quickly, because you just drag it there. One of the big issues with cinematic editing is there's just so much ifs. Does this look good? Is it this cut? Does this one cut here? And it's we talk about it how it's the void, and honestly, one of the quickest ways to get right through the void is to make a found footage movie, because you get a lot more flexibility, and as you mentioned, you really kind of have to do everything in the video production process and just get there with what you have in the editing. So that being said, before we kind of hop into more detail of it, I think this is great for any filmmaker out there. You always look at budget, but not a lot of people, I don't really hear people talk about timeline as much. And it's really just as much as an important factor. And it's, if not, honestly, if you really want to have a scalable model, having a consistency and a push to it. And if you look at TBS, it's almost always kind of a little bit of a clunky ebb and flow with kind of how things are getting pushed out there. I'd say we got it a lot cleaner now. You know, there's a big backlog when it came to the Haunting of the Murder House or the Morgan Estate and the Devil in the Room. But, you know, as a filmmaker, we hear, you know, most people talk about filmmaking in the span of, you know, 1 year pre-production, 1 year, like, you know, 1 year pre-production, maybe 2 weeks production, another year post-production, and then a year promoting it. So one movie, 3 years. And, you know, when you start allocating time to it, it gets to the point that we always mention it's much better, in our opinion, to continue to move forward, make more movies. You get exponentially better in any creative process. You know, you'll talk about writers, you talk to everyone. It's not as simple as a, you know, sit down and put in the work. There's a lot of little, you know, nuances to what you're editing and what you're doing. And I think these things end up adding up and delaying it. And the thing that I think we've latched onto now is with the Discord that we have in the group that we have, with the channels that we have, with the marketing exposure that we can kind of produce now, if we can continue to push these out, it's only going to build a better base for you as a filmmaker, or for us as, you know, DVS, but also any filmmaker should be looking at building this portfolio and this catalog, because it's only going to make yourself, you know, much easier. If you take 3 years to make a movie, you're going to be waiting, you know, 4 to 6 months for that first check. And most movies, typically, it's like the 5 to 7 year timeline is what they're looking at for full recouping of the budget. So, do you want to talk about how our timelines are much different, but also how every single filmmaker should look at timelines, and why found footage potentially is a bit of that hack for it?
Yeah, I think it's a huge problem with you know, filmmaking. As an indie filmmaker, you're pretty much your own production hub. Like, you are the producer, you're the director, you're going to handle distribution, and you're going to build your fan base. Like, that's what you need to cultivate, is your fan base. If you're releasing one movie every 3 years, you know, you're going to release it. You're going to get a lot of people who like it, who follow you, who subscribe to all your stuff, but then they're going to fall off if you don't make another project in 3 years. And I really think that you have to kind of release a movie every quarter. I think 4 movies is really what we need to do right now. I think like we have to release 4 movies in 1 year. And we're going to try and do 3 this year, which I feel very confident that we can do. But I think that's where you have to go. And if you don't have help, it's going to be very difficult. Like doing 4 cinematic movies, editing them, and then working on the next movie in pre-production, writing the script while editing, while also working with distribution and quality control. You know, unless you have a team, that's just not going to be possible. So I think, you know, found footage is going to allow us to do this. I'm really hoping this works out, because I think we can do 2 found footage movies and 2 cinematic movies, and then that's fine. Or maybe 3 found footage and 1 cinematic movie. I don't want to give up on either one, but I think that, you know, where we are right now, until we're able to get more funds, I can't really bring on someone to assist in editing or in other parts of the business. Like, we just have to kind of keep this going how it is now. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm very happy with where we are. But, you know, my goal is to just always create more movies. The only metric I care about is getting more movies. That'll get our fan base more energized. We can pull more people from the Discord. It'll help me learn faster, and I guarantee it's a key revenue driver. So it's just trying to figure out, all right, how do we go from 2 movies to 4 movies? And I think eventually, if you have a full production team, if you have the full production process in place, you can do 12 movies in a year. I'm 100% sure you can do that. Would it stress me out and probably burn me out? Yes, but I think we can do it. I think it'd be a fun thing to do. But that requires a team. Like, you would need multiple people working on a script, multiple people editing, and multiple people working like in their post-production process. But, you know, if you look back in 2019 or 2018, we did Into the Forest, we did Suicide House, Morgan Estate, and Devil in the Room. It's 4 movies. We did that in the span of 6 months. So you can do at least 8. But I had a team working with me. We were pulling from resources from DBS. So it's just trying to figure out how the best way to proceed. And right now, I think story is king. I think you can tell a really good story through found footage, and people will appreciate that story and give you feedback on that story. And if that story is good, you can make it cinematic. That's what we did in Murder House. We took a found footage movie, which was Suicide House, and made it cinematic, which is Murder House. And that's just what it is. Story's going to trump all, but you have to have enough reps. You have to have enough feedback to actually make a good story.
Definitely agree on that. I mean, one caveat I'd like to say is, yeah, we filmed 4 movies, but 2 of those took an extra year and a half basically to get through. And surprise, surprise, those were the cinematic versions of it. So the one last thing I want to talk about with found footage before we hop into the details of the movie is, me personally, I'm not the biggest fan of found footage. I think I spent too much time in the indie pits of kind of, Amazon Prime Video and just seeing all the movies out there because a lot of the factors that we've mentioned do make it very attractive, but like again, it allows for very low production value, very amateurish, just production. And again, I'm a huge supporter of all indie films. I think anyone that creates it, it's already a winner just because getting that process done and taken care of, such a massive milestone. But I can see, to me, I got to the point where if it was found footage, I just couldn't watch it. I was just like, all right, I'm done with this. I'm over it. And what was really surprising to me, and I'm curious, how much of an impact it had on you, but once we started doing the Discord, and once we started having our members, we have 9,000 Discord members right now, and we would watch all of our movies, and consistently I would get people saying Into the Forest was their favorite, and Haunting the Suicide House was their favorite. And specifically, I'm going to call out Ashley on this one again. She's a massive found footage fan, but she showed us this online community of found footage fanatics. And, they've actually been promoting the Murder House because there's, an element of found footage to it. But there is a very big built-in audience for found footage horror. And I'm curious, was that something that made an impact or a factor when it comes to just saying like, okay, there's definitely channels out there. And also going back to the Suicide House being one of our most successful, films when it comes to monetary wise.
Yeah, I think the reason we did found footage and moved away from not doing found footage was twofold. Number one, you make a found footage movie and immediately you're going to get a ton of 1 stars and a lot of feedback where people are like, oh no, not another Blair Witch movie. Oh, I hate found footage. Like the people who are against found footage are very, very against found footage. Like they are very passionate and they are very, very loud. So all our Facebook ads that we run would just get just onslaughted with these comments of people like, not another found footage, not another, I hate found footage. We have it now for the Murder House, which isn't even a found footage movie. And there's just a ton of comments that are just like, stop making found footage movies. Like the Blair Witch was terrible and this looks terrible. And so obviously, I listened to feedback and, we saw that in Into the Forest and Suicide House. So I was like, all right, maybe people are just done with found footage. They're just, very aggressive with their hatred of found footage. And maybe like we just need to go with cinematic. But it just turns out just very polarizing. There, for every one person that is against found footage, there's 5 to 10 that really love found footage. And I think a lot of people, if they get to that point, they're like, I hate found footage, but then they end up watching your movie anyways. So that works. I think it's just very polarizing. So I think that was kind of a mistake that I made. I should just, any kind of activity, engagement on your movie is good, even if it's bad. The fact that people are engaging, taking the time to leave a review or to engage with your post is a good thing. The second thing is that we were still in the process of trying to get distribution. We were trying to figure out how to get on these bigger platforms. And distribution does not like found footage at all. They do not like found footage because they think it's cheap and your movie is if they're going to push your movie, it's an example or just trying to think of the best word, but it's like an extension of their brand. They don't want to have like cheap found footage movies under their brand umbrella. They want to be known as the distribution company that, pushes out good quality products like A24. So they don't like found footage at all. And it doesn't disqualify you. There's some distribution companies that specialize in found footage, but for the majority of them, they just do not want, unless it's really, really, really good, they won't touch it. But now we're getting to the point where the distribution companies are working with us. We kind of get our pick of which ones we want to work with. They're comfortable with us. They know our product. They know our community, our outreach, and they're willing to take a little bit more chances. So that isn't a problem. We're just in a better spot on the distribution aspect of it. So it allows us to do a little bit more things. We have access to companies that other found footage, filmmakers would not have access to. So I think that's kind of shifted, but really, once again, just comes back to the editing is taking so long and it's taking so many hours to get this done that I'm not able to make more movies because I'm still editing, our past movies. And I think that needs to change. So I'm hoping that this is the solution.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm very confident in the fact that, I was even saying this movie's going to be out before Shapeshifter. So we'll see what ends up happening with that. And, I'm going to be the on-set editor again. And it's going to be a breeze for me. Just got to get a little bit of drag and drop action going on there. But it's one of those things where, when we were talking with the crew just yesterday, we mentioned, hey guys, we're most likely going to have like this movie basically done and ready to go to some degree, not polished or anything because of the nature of found footage. So excited for that, excited for the audience that we can potentially get from found footage, excited, for having all of our Discord members in this movie. It's really going to be great on a lot of different things. So with that being said, I think the last thing I kind of want to touch on with just the whole found footage side of things, I'm also very excited because when we talked about our found footage movies of Into the Forest and Suicide House, it was the first time people started focusing on our story, and it was the first time that we realized we're not very good at telling a story. I think we kind of had that hunch, but we more or less got a very clear what is going on, and it was odd to us because we had a plot. This is what happened. There's a witch. She's shapeshifter. Don't be in there alone. Watch out for Nelson's daughter. He was there. And then in, The Haunting of the Suicide House, it was Rosemary. It was her baby. But then also it was the daughter got possessed. And we realized that we had too many things and we didn't pick a single thing. And after Into the Forest, we did, the Morgan Estate and the Devil in the Room, which we started honing in. And then we did that again in Cabin 13. We did a really great job in Murder House and in Shapeshifter. So I'm excited because this is going to be us finally revisiting found footage, but understanding story and with a lot more solid and very straightforward plot. This is exactly what's going on. So I'm excited about that feedback. What are your thoughts on kind of, getting the next attempt at a found footage after learning such a critical element of filmmaking?
Well, I'm excited because it's not only having a really good story. So I've watched pretty much every single found footage movie that's been on any kind of charts or any kind of like Amazon platform in the last 3 weeks. I went through the found footage Facebook group and I just watched all their stuff. And the two things that I'm constantly seeing is the stories on a lot of these are kind of a little bit weaker. I think a lot of people forgive a lot of things in found footage, and the pacings are really bad on a lot of these. There's just nothing happens up until really the climax. So I'm really interested to see that we can take our expertise in story and our expertise in pacing and see what that kind of does with a found footage movie. I'm excited to do that. I think this movie is probably our fastest paced movie. It's faster than Shapeshifter, and Shapeshifter is a very, very fast movie. So combining that with found footage, not allowing the audience to, take a deep breath is something that I'm really focusing on. But I really excited for this one because we're really trying to focus on tone. And this is something that's been, bothering me for a little bit. I don't think we've ever really mastered tone. And it's been brought up to me multiple times by just distribution people and people at higher up levels of, this process where, they think tone is super important and that's really how you sell a movie. And at first I didn't agree with them. I think that, I was like, all right, like this just doesn't really make any sense. The more I start to look at the movies that do really well, I think they do really nail tone. I think it adds atmosphere and creepiness and just makes a better horror movie. Where I think Girl in Cabin 13 was sort of like a slasher, kind of like had some upbeat moments. We had the scene with Joe in the bluegrass, which kind of took people out of it. In Murder House, I think we did a better job with tone, especially towards the end of the movie. I think it got a little dark and grittier, but we still had like the cheesy social media stuff. We had the chat logs and we had the intro with like Dylan vaping in the fog machine, which kind of threw people out. This one, I've really removed all that stuff. This is a very dark and gritty movie, and maybe we're moving too far down like the dark and gritty, and just not very happy, happy fun movie time, and we can calibrate. But we're gonna swing for the fences on this one. We're really gonna try and make it just a very heavy psychological movie. And I'm really interested to see the feedback because it's going to be the polar opposite of Shapeshifter, which is just very 70s and 80s, like upbeat horror kind of movie, and we're swinging the complete opposite direction, which is a good thing because then we can kind of calibrate once we get the feedback. But I am interested in doing that. I think all the actors understand that the pre-production we put into this is going to show. So I'm really excited to see the feedback on this one. I think it's going to be a good split test for us to see the difference between the Shapeshifter and Into the Forest.
So that perfectly leads into kind of the next thoughts, which is, I'm really interested in what we're trying to take away from the production in itself. I think the big thing for me, as you mentioned, is obviously going to be the tone. I think we're looking at, making it that dark, that gritty movie. I mean, there's already a scene in it that I've basically risen a slightly red flag where I'm like, hey, I'm happy with you doing it, but this one's intense, man. So we got some heat coming in the sense of just how gritty it's gonna get. I think what I'm looking forward to is I think we've understood the concepts of cinematics when it comes to doing it right. And I think because we are focusing in on scares that we've done before, a lot of the scares are just pulled from other movies, things that do work. We had a really, really great pre-production special effects meeting in the sense of like a scare that's going to work with just like our eyes being ripped out, which, we have a little test footage of that, which in my opinion came out really good. So I'm excited because I think the overall look is really going to be one of those things, like you said, for the tone. And I think to me, this represents us really taking a big step up in just the overall production value because again found footage hides things. People are more forgiving of a found footage, so I think we're going to pull off our most realistic movie to date, kind of as you mentioned for the tone. Is there anything else that you're looking? I think the two things I'm looking for in my opinion, as you mentioned, is I want that gritty tone and that realist look. And then I think the second thing I'm looking for is having this movie done within literally a month after post. I think we're going to have it up, done, ready, finished, out, stamped by the end of November. So what are kind of anything else that you're looking for when it comes to just ideal, everything goes right, what ideally we'll get out of this?
Yeah, I mean, just to get a movie that we can upload is the first step. Going through this process, you know, goal one, the main goal is just get the tone right. Really make this a dark and gritty movie. Make the audience uncomfortable all the way throughout, and really make them queasy. I want this to be the opposite of a Hallmark movie. I want to start with a very strong intro hook and punch the audience in the stomach, and they can't, breathe the rest of the movie. Um, Other than that, the objectives are usually the same with the other movies. Just try and get a more streamlined, smoother production. There's only 3 scenes in this movie that are giving me hesitation as far as like I'm going to give them extra time, which is the intro, which gets its own day pretty much. We have a small scene where they first start to see some paranormal stuff in the woods, and then we have the climax scene. Other than that, the rest of the movie seems pretty easy to shoot. It should be. I don't think it's as complicated as Murder House or Shapeshifter. I think it's more complicated than Girl in Cabin 13. But it'll be interesting to see, how I do with found footage. I've never shot a found footage movie, so I can do it. I feel comfortable doing it. But just working with the actors to block them out when we do our cut points. They have to kind of go for 1 or 2 minutes, and this is almost like extended oneers for a lot of this stuff. And so that's just a little extra aspect of doing this film. So I'm hoping that it works out pretty well. But then as far as like the post production, I really want to have 3 movies done by, December 31st. I want to be celebrating New Year's with, Shapeshifter in quality control, this movie in quality control, and the one in December, the small little production we're going to try and do in at least in the ending editing stages, or that one could be in quality control as well too. I think that would be a very successful year. We made 3 movies. Murder House did extremely well. Shapeshifters going to do very, very well. I think that's a very solid year for us. And so those would be my goals. I think we're in a good position to achieve them. It's just, whether or not we can execute or not.
Execution is always the key and critical matter. And again, I think just making all of these movies has made us very, very confident with it. So, kind of the last thing I want to touch on, as I mentioned earlier, this is our first movie, in my opinion, that we're really starting to get a powered up Discord. We did do the Shapeshifter auditions, but that was through TikTok. We did the auditions for the for this film, with our Discord community. As you mentioned, we have a ton of people who are chipping in, providing a lot of things and a lot of support there. I just want to talk about, I think the level of confidence. We have our main crew. We have Dylan coming back, we have Howard coming back, we have Jessica, we have Lizzie is kind of the main crew for some of these characters and a lot of the Discord members. And I just kind of wanted you to talk about, the difference. One of the biggest things that I think comes up in indie filmmaking, and we hear it all the time, is, one thing that people really discount is a set is really management. It's people management. And I think you get a lot of creatives who get on set, they don't know how to work with people, and then things fall apart for one major reason, which is, this is just a paycheck to me. This isn't my portfolio. This isn't my ticket. This might be your ticket, out of here, kind of like, to become famous or whatnot. I'm just here to get a paycheck and do my job. Now, I'm not saying that's the case for every single person out there, but you're never going to find that level of passion, in my opinion, from people that you just find. You say, hey, this is the job. This is what it pays. This is what we can do. Can you do it? And I think we kind of experienced that in some of our earlier movies, specifically, on the editing side of things. You got a lot of like, hey, you can't use this footage, instead of like figuring out ways around it. But now with the Discord, one of my favorite things about it is, every single person that we bring on set here is diehard DBS. They're passionate. They're gonna help out. They're gonna work. I look back at Howard on the set of the Shapeshifter, and when he was wrapped, he was like, "How can I help out?" And he was out until 3, 4 in the morning holding a flashlight, just making sure that he can do anything to help us out. So, do you want to talk about what it's like to have very passionate people and to have, in my opinion, we finally got a really good streamlined crew to be able to execute on these projects? Because that's people think you just make a movie and the movie appears and it's exactly what you want, but it's literally a process of guiding an entire crew. Each person's different, and I think a lot of films, you don't have that level of buy-in that we are now seeing just from our community and just from our entire team.
Yeah, I definitely think that running a set is pretty much just managing people. It's trying to find the best people and put them in the right places, and just make sure they have everything they need to succeed. And it is a shame that's like this, but I mean, I can see why. I mean, there's probably a ton of indie sets that are just absolute disasters where the product is not going to be good, and you're just like, hey, I want experience and I want a paycheck, and that's just what you do. I think we're much different. We're much smoother. We're much more efficient. I consider our sets closer to the Hollywood model than a lot of other sets. We're very streamlined. We know exactly what we're doing. We know how to get it done. But a lot of that comes from pre-production. I'm really making sure in the casting that the people that we work with, they want to do this. This is what they want to do. And out of the 50 or 100 Zoom meetings that I did with, the final round of casting, or the amount of people who disqualified themselves by saying stupid things or saying that this wasn't, what they wanted to do, was kind of ridiculous. And those people are going to go on another indie set, and, they're just going to collect their paycheck. Like Kel said, I think we're very good at figuring out who wants to do this and is comfortable with what we're trying to do. And, this is what they want to do, and they'll give it the all the leads, in this movie did such a great job in pre-production. They're really giving it their all. They're fixing their script. They're fixing their characters. And that's the kind of level of commitment that we need, because it's just, we have such a small crew right now. Everybody needs to be able to contribute to this. And then I was never worried about the Discord because those are such passionate people that all you had to do is give them the opportunity. And once they had the opportunity, they knew to seize that moment. And that's what they did. The Discord has been absolutely phenomenal. They've asked great questions. The pre-production has been absolutely phenomenal. But I never, like, this is why I would always cast from the Discord first, because, you know, it's supreme confidence that they can come in and get the job done and that they're going to give it their all. I'd rather cast from the Discord than, other people who are just going to consider this a paycheck. 10 out of 10 times I'd pick the Discord. So it's just kind of figuring out how to get that, make it as efficient as possible for the people on set, and just put them in a place to succeed. Everybody needs to be in a place to succeed. All the actors, all the leads, everybody on this project. My job is to put you in a place to succeed so you can come in here, give it your all, because once again, this is just a lottery ticket. You never know who's going to see this. You never know if, our movies, which I think are very good right now, all they need to do is take another step to great, and all of a sudden you're on Netflix, you're on Showtime, you're on HBO, you're on the bigger players. And it's just the devil's in the details. Going from a good movie to a great movie, it's just the small things. And one day we're going to get there where all of a sudden these things, either by sheer luck or just by skill, they all kind of just connect and the movie just becomes a hit. And everyone should be aware of that, because that could be a game changer for just not myself, but for the company and for everybody else who works on this project.
I mean, yeah, that's just the case of it. And again, this is just the environment that filmmakers have to learn to navigate. And this is just one of the pitfalls that we have to, join in, find the right team, find the right crew. And it's only something that comes with experience and having that confidence and knowing everything that we can. So that's going to go ahead and wrap up this episode. And again, when you're listening to this, we're about 4 days into our shoot. We're probably going out to the night for a much bigger scene. So definitely be sure to stay tuned and keep up to date in our social medias. We're going to keep you guys updated. We're going to keep you posted. The place to be is our Discord channel, DVS Films. If you ever wanted to work with us, be behind the scenes, get on set, because we make movies for our fans, with our fans. And the next time you hear us, we will be talking about how the shoot went for Into the Forest 2.0. But until then, have a good one.